My sister dumped her kids on me, expecting me to look after them during her months-long vacation. When I warned, I would call Child Protective Services. She had people attack me in my own home to snatch them back. So here's the thing about growing up in a typical American household, where one kid gets all the attention while the other becomes invisible. That was my reality for 18 long years, and let me tell you, it shaped everything that came after. I'm Jack, and my sister Britney was always a golden child. Picture this. She had the perfect athletic build, could charm anyone within 5 minutes of meeting them, and had that natural confidence that made adults automatically like her. Meanwhile, I was a kid with thick glasses who preferred books over baseball and could recite Star Wars trivia instead of sports stats. Our mom never tried to hide her favoritism. Every family dinner became a comparison session where Brittany's latest achievement got center stage, while my accomplishments got a polite nod at best. When Britney made the varsity cheerleading squad as a sophomore, Mom threw her a celebration party with all her friends. When I won the state science fair that same year, I got a pat on the head and was told not to brag about it because it might make Britney feel bad. The worst part wasn't even the obvious stuff. It was the subtle ways Mom would undermine me while building up my sister. If I mentioned wanting to try out for debate team, Mom would suggest I focus on my studies instead, because not everyone could be as naturally social as Britney. If I complained about something Britney did, I was being jealous and needed to learn from her example. But the incident that really opened my eyes happened during our junior year of high school. We had this massive social studies project worth 30% of our grade, and I spent weeks developing this incredible presentation about the economic impact of the space program. I'm talking charts, graphs, historical analysis, the works. I was genuinely proud of what I created. The night before it was due, I made a mistake of showing it to Britney because she seemed stressed about her own project. She looked through my work, asked a bunch of questions about my research methods, and even took some photos of my visual aids. I thought she was just being a supportive sister for once. Next day at school, I'm sitting in first period when my friend Eric rushes over with this shocked expression. Apparently, Britney had presented my exact project in her earlier class, claiming she developed the whole concept herself. Same thesis, same research, same conclusions, everything. She'd even recreated my visual aids overnight. When I confronted her about it, she just shrugged and said I should have presented first if I wanted credit. When I told our parents what happened, expecting them to be outraged, Mom's response was to tell me to forget about it and not make trouble for Britney, because she was stressed about college applications. Dad, who usually stayed out of these situations, just mumbled something about how these things happen, and maybe I should have kept my work private. That was the moment I realized my own family would throw me under the bus to protect their precious daughter. The teacher eventually figured out what happened when other students mentioned seeing my project weeks earlier, but the damage was done. Britney got a slap on the wrist and had to redo her assignment, while I had to deal with the awkwardness of everyone knowing my sister had stolen from me. What hurt most was how my parents acted like I was a problem for bringing it up. That experience taught me something crucial about relying on family. Specifically that I couldn't. From that day forward, I kept my goals, my achievements, and my plans to myself. I learned to be completely self-sufficient because depending on anyone in my household was setting myself up for disappointment. While Britney coasted through high school on her charm and looks, I threw myself into academics with laser focus. I wasn't naturally the smartest kid in school, but I was definitely the most determined. I studied while she went to parties. I worked on college applications while she assumed her cheerleading would get her into state university. The guidance counselor, Mrs. Peterson, was probably the first adult who ever really saw my potential. She encouraged me to apply for scholarships at technical institutes, places where my analytical mind would be valued instead of just tolerated. She helped me understand that there was a whole world beyond my small town, where being smart and methodical were actually advantages. Senior year brought the ultimate validation. While Britney was scrambling to get into community college after her mediocre grades caught up with her, I received a full academic scholarship to MIT. Not just partial funding, but everything covered: tuition, room, board, even books. The day that acceptance letter arrived was surreal. I remember standing in our kitchen, holding this piece of paper that represented everything I'd worked for, and my mom's first reaction was concern about how Britney would feel seeing me succeed when she was struggling. Even my moment of triumph had to be filtered through how it affected the golden child. College was like stepping into a completely different universe. Suddenly, I was surrounded by people who valued intelligence, innovation, and hard work. Nobody cared that I wasn't the most social guy in a room or that I preferred analyzing data to making small talk. My professors appreciated my thorough research methods and attention to detail. For the first time in my life, I wasn't weird for being analytical. I was exactly what they were looking for. I threw myself into computer science and information systems, discovering I had a natural talent for understanding complex networks and solving technical problems. While my classmates were struggling with advanced programming concepts, I was already thinking 3 steps ahead about system optimization and security protocols. By my senior year, I was getting job offers from major tech companies before I even graduated. The kid who'd been told he was too antisocial and boring had become exactly what the modern economy valued most. I accepted a position with a growing IT company in Arizona that offered excellent pay, full benefits, and the chance to work on cutting-edge projects. Meanwhile, Britney had dropped out of community college after 2 semesters and was bouncing between retail jobs back home. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I'd learned not to gloat. Success was its own reward. Moving to Arizona felt like shedding an old skin. I found an apartment in a quiet suburb of Phoenix, bought reliable furniture and a decent car, and started building the stable, independent life I'd always wanted. My co-workers respected my expertise, my boss valued my contributions, and for the first time ever, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I stayed in minimal contact with my family, sending obligatory holiday cards and making brief phone calls on birthdays. Britney was living with some guy she'd met at a bar, and from what I gathered, she was already talking about marriage and kids. Mom would occasionally hint that I should visit more often or try to be more involved in family events, but I'd learned to politely deflect. The distance felt healthy. I was finally free from the constant comparisons and the suffocating dynamic that had defined my childhood. At least, that's what I thought until everything changed 5 years later. Because here's the thing about toxic family dynamics. They have a way of pulling you back in just when you think you've escaped for good. And sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones who eventually need you the most, even if they'll never admit it. 5 years of peaceful independence came crashing down on a scorching Tuesday afternoon in July. I was working from home, debugging some network security issues, when my doorbell rang. Not the polite single ring of a delivery driver, but that aggressive repeated pressing that immediately puts you on edge. Standing on my doorstep was Britney, looking like she'd just stepped out of a reality TV show with her oversized sunglasses and designer handbag. Behind her were 2 little boys with messy hair and clothes that had definitely seen better days. Without any greeting or explanation, she announced she was dropping off Ethan and Noah for a few months while she traveled to Dubai with her boyfriend Marcus. Just like that, as if I was some kind of free babysitting service she could activate whenever convenient. The audacity was breathtaking, even by Britney's standards. She hadn't called, texted, or given any advance notice. She just showed up expecting me to completely rearrange my life for her convenience. When I started protest, she cut me off with that fake sweet voice she perfected over the years. The kids looked exhausted and confused, clutching small backpacks that clearly contained everything they owned. Ethan, the older one at 9 years old, had this resigned expression that no kid should ever have. 6-year-old Noah was hiding behind his brother, looking like he might cry at any moment. I told Britney this was completely unacceptable and threatened to call Child Protective Services if she tried to abandon these children with me. That's when her mask completely slipped, and I got a full display of the manipulative tactics she'd learned over the years. First came the guilt trip about family responsibility and how I owed her for all the times Mom and Dad helped me growing up. Then she shifted to emotional manipulation, claiming the boys specifically asked to stay with their Uncle Jack because they looked up to me so much. Finally, when none of that worked, she went straight for the threat that would change everything. She pulled out her phone and started recording, speaking in this exaggerated Southern accent she'd somehow developed, claiming I had Asperger's syndrome and was mentally unstable. She threatened to send this video to my employer and post it on social media to destroy my professional reputation. The whole performance was so calculated and vicious that it took my breath away. This wasn't just sister drama anymore. This was someone willing to destroy my career and livelihood to get what she wanted. And of course, she knew exactly which buttons to push because she'd grown up watching me struggle with social interactions. While this confrontation was happening, poor Ethan had positioned himself protectively in front of his little brother, clearly used to being the adult in these situations. The sight of these kids witnessing their mother threaten their uncle over taking care of them was heartbreaking. Before I could fully process what was happening, Mom's car pulled into my driveway. Apparently, this whole ambush had been coordinated in advance. Mom emerged with her usual fake smile, immediately taking Britney's side and explaining how I needed to step up and help family during difficult times. When I pointed out that abandoning children without notice wasn't a difficult time but child neglect, Mom launched into her familiar lecture about how I'd always been jealous of Britney's success and happiness. According to her twisted logic, this was just another example of my selfishness and inability to support my sister. The argument escalated quickly, with Mom getting increasingly aggressive when I refused to back down. She started bringing up every perceived slight from our childhood, every time I'd supposedly made Britney feel bad, every way I'd failed to be the supportive brother she deserved. That's when she crossed a line that changed everything. In her rage, she shoved me backward hard enough that I stumbled and crashed into my entertainment center. My prize model airplane, a detailed replica of a P-51 Mustang that my friend Eric had given me for college graduation, fell and shattered on the floor. The airplane wasn't just decoration. It represented one of the few genuine friendships I maintained and countless hours Eric had spent building something meaningful for me. Seeing it destroyed by Mom's violent outburst while she defended Britney's abandonment of her children was the final straw. I told them both to get out of my house immediately. Britney smugly reminded me that the children were staying regardless of what I wanted. And if I called CPS, she'd make sure my employer knew about my supposed mental health issues. Mom chimed in that I was being dramatic and should be grateful for the chance to bond with my nephews. As they prepared to leave, I realized these two little boys were about to watch their mother disappear for months without any explanation or comfort. Ethan was trying so hard to be brave, while Noah had started crying quietly. Whatever my issues with Britney, these innocent kids didn't deserve to be treated like inconvenient luggage. I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I told the boys they could stay, but only because they needed someone responsible looking after them, not because their mother had any right to demand it. Britney looked triumphant, clearly thinking she'd won another manipulation game. But here's what she didn't understand about the adult I'd become. Those 5 years of independence hadn't just given me professional success and financial stability. They'd taught me how to think strategically and protect myself from exactly these kinds of family power plays. While Britney was busy celebrating her perceived victory, I was already planning my next moves. Because if she wanted to play hardball with threats and manipulation, she'd picked the wrong target. The scared little brother who used to absorb her abuse without fighting back was long gone. As their car disappeared down my street, I looked at these two exhausted children who'd just been abandoned by the person who was supposed to protect them most. They had no idea they were about to become the center of a battle that would expose every toxic dynamic in our family and finally give me the chance to protect someone the way I'd wish someone had protected me. The game was about to change, and for the first time in my life, I held all the cards. The first thing I did after Britney left was sit down with Ethan and Noah to figure out what we were dealing with. These kids have been through enough chaos, and they deserve some honest communication about what was happening, even if their mother had never provided that. Ethan, trying to act older than his 9 years, immediately started explaining that they'd be good and wouldn't cause any trouble. Noah just nodded along with whatever his big brother said, but I could see the fear in his eyes. They were used to walking on eggshells around adults, which told me everything I needed to know about their home situation. Instead of making them feel like burdens, I decided to treat them like house guests who happened to be temporarily staying with me. I showed them around the apartment, explained how things worked, and let them choose which rooms they wanted to sleep in. For the first time since they'd arrived, I saw them start to relax a little. That first evening, while we were eating dinner, the real story started coming out in bits and pieces. Britney had been dating this Marcus guy for about 6 months, and he'd apparently promised to take her on some luxury vacation to Dubai. The kids had been told they were going to stay with Uncle Jack for a fun summer adventure. What struck me most was how matter-of-factly Ethan talked about their living situation. He mentioned making breakfast for Noah when Mom slept late, doing laundry when they ran out of clean clothes, and walking to school by themselves when Mom forgot to drive them. This kid had been functioning as a parent in that household for who knows how long. I realized I wasn't just dealing with temporary babysitting. I was looking at 2 neglected children who needed stability, consistency, and probably some professional intervention. But first, I had to make sure they felt safe and cared for while I figured out how to handle Britney's threats. The next morning, I took them shopping for everything they'd need for an extended stay. We hit Target for clothes, toys, and basic necessities, then stopped at GameStop because Ethan mentioned loving video games but never having his own console. Watching their excitement over picking out new clothes and games was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. At the toy store, Noah gravitated toward this big toy pickup truck that he kept looking at but wouldn't ask for. When I suggested we get it, his face lit up like Christmas morning. Ethan was more reserved, clearly not used to adults following through on promises, but even he started getting excited when I told him to pick out whatever games he wanted. During our shopping trip, more details about their home life emerged. Noah casually mentioned that Mommy's friends sometimes stayed over and got really loud at night. Ethan talked about having to make sure the doors were locked because Mommy sometimes forgot. These weren't dramatic revelations, just matter-of-fact statements that painted a picture of chaos and neglect. I started documenting everything they told me, not in an obvious way that would make them feel like they were betraying their mother, but making mental notes about every red flag they mentioned. If this situation was going to escalate, I wanted to be prepared with facts, not just emotions. Meanwhile, I was also preparing for Britney's next move. I knew she wouldn't just disappear quietly, especially once she realized I wasn't going to be the pushover she expected. Sure enough, my phone started buzzing with increasingly aggressive texts demanding updates about the kids and reminding me of her threats about my job. That's when I made the smartest decision of this whole mess. During one of her phone calls, where she was going on about how I'd better not cause any problems for her, I hit record. She spent 15 minutes detailing exactly how she planned to destroy my professional reputation if I didn't comply with her demands. The recording was pure gold. She explicitly stated that she was abandoning her children for months to travel with her boyfriend, threatened to lie about my mental health to my employer, and made it clear that she had no intention of providing any financial support while I cared for her sons. Everything was right there in her own words. Armed with this evidence and the growing list of concerning things the boys had shared about their living situation, I made the call I should have made the first day. I contacted Child Protective Services and filed a formal report about child abandonment and neglect. The CPS worker, Ms. Rodriguez, was professional and thorough. She interviewed me about the circumstances of the children's arrival, listened to the recording of Britney's threats, and spoke with both boys privately about their home situation. What she heard clearly concerned her enough to open an official investigation. She explained that while temporary child care arrangements weren't unusual, abandoning children without a formal agreement, refusing to provide financial support, and the pattern of neglect the boys described definitely warranted investigation. She assured me that the children would remain in my care while they looked into the situation. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt like I had some control over the situation. Britney might have thought she could manipulate and threaten her way to getting whatever she wanted, but she'd picked the wrong target and the wrong time to overplay her hand. The boys were thriving with consistent meals, bedtimes, and attention. Ethan started opening up about school and his interests, while Noah became this chatty, energetic kid who'd apparently been hiding under all that anxiety. Seeing them blossom in a stable environment just reinforced how bad their previous situation must have been. I also started connecting with other parents in my apartment complex and the neighborhood. Having 2 kids around forced me out of my comfortable introvert bubble, and I discovered that being responsible for someone else actually made social interactions easier. I had a clear purpose and role that took the pressure off my usual social awkwardness. More importantly, I was building a network of people who could witness that I was providing good care for these children. If Britney tried to paint me as unfit or unstable, I have plenty of evidence to the contrary. 3 weeks into this arrangement, I got the call I'd been expecting. Britney was coming back early from her trip, and she was furious about the CPS investigation. According to the angry voicemail she left, I betrayed family trust and created problems where none existed. But here's the thing about preparation. When you know trouble is coming, you can be ready for it. I had documentation, witnesses, official support, and most importantly, I had 2 little boys who were finally getting the care and attention they deserved. Let her come. This time, I was ready. Britney returned from Dubai with a fury that made her previous manipulation attempts look like gentle suggestions. She rolled up to my apartment complex in a massive black pickup truck with her boyfriend Marcus, who looked like he bench-pressed small cars for fun, and my mom riding shotgun for moral support. The attack was swift and brutal. They didn't even knock, just used some story about emergency family situation to convince my building manager to let them in. I heard heavy footsteps in the hallway. Then my door burst open like something out of a cop show. Marcus filled my doorway while Britney stormed past him, screaming about how I destroyed her life and ruined her relationship by involving CPS. Mom followed behind, adding her own commentary about my selfishness and inability to handle simple family responsibilities without creating drama. Before I could even respond, Britney shoved me so hard I went down on the hardwood floor, hitting my shoulder against the coffee table. The boys, who'd been playing video games in the living room, started crying as these 3 adults invaded their safe space with violence and chaos. What happened next broke my heart. Ethan immediately moved to protect Noah, positioning himself between his little brother and the angry adults, while Noah clung to his toy truck like a lifeline. These kids had seen this kind of explosive adult behavior before, and their practice response told me everything about their normal home environment. Britney grabbed both boys and started dragging them toward the door, not even giving them time to put on shoes or grab their belongings. When Ethan asked about his new clothes and games, she snapped that he didn't need any of that garbage I bought to manipulate them against her. The most chilling part was her parting speech. Standing in my doorway with 2 barefoot children, she announced with genuine pride that I would never have what she had: family, love, children who needed me. According to her twisted logic, my successful career and stable life meant nothing, because I'd always be alone while she had people who depended on her. The irony was staggering. Here she was, dragging away 2 terrified children who just experienced weeks of stability and care, claiming this chaos represented the superior family life I was supposedly jealous of. The delusion was almost impressive in its completeness. As soon as their truck disappeared, I called 911. I had detailed descriptions of all 3 adults, the license plate number, and a clear case of breaking and entering followed by assault. The operator took everything seriously, especially when I mentioned the ongoing CPS investigation and the fact that children had been removed from my care by force. Within 20 minutes, 2 police officers were taking my statement and photographing the minor injuries from being shoved to the ground. They'd already been briefed by CPS about the situation, which meant this wasn't just a domestic dispute, but potential interference with an active child welfare case. The officers explained that Britney and Marcus had seriously miscalculated by involving violence. What might have been treated as a family disagreement about custody arrangements had now become criminal charges of breaking and entering, assault, and interference with child protection investigation. Mom's participation made her an accessory to everything. Within hours, all 3 of them were arrested at Mom's house where they'd gone to lay low. Apparently, Marcus had outstanding warrants in 2 other states, which explained why he'd been so eager to avoid any police involvement. Britney's perfect boyfriend wasn't just controlling and aggressive. He was actually a fugitive. The legal proceedings that followed were like watching dominoes fall. Britney tried to play victim, claiming I'd manipulated the children against her and falsely reported her to authorities. But the recorded phone calls, witness statements from neighbors who'd heard the confrontation, and the children's own accounts to CPS painted a very different picture. The most surprising development was Mom's complete betrayal of her golden child. Faced with potential jail time for her role in the break-in and assault, she immediately threw Britney under the bus to save herself. Suddenly, all of Britney's past mistakes and poor decisions became fair game for Mom's testimony. Watching my mother testify against Britney while positioning herself as a concerned grandmother who tried to help was masterful manipulation, even by her standards. She painted herself as the voice of reason, trying to mediate between her stubborn son and irresponsible daughter, conveniently forgetting her enthusiastic participation in the violent home invasion. Meanwhile, Britney's attempts to contact my employer and damage my professional reputation backfired spectacularly. I'd already briefed my boss about the situation and provided documentation of the threats. When she called claiming I was mentally unstable and dangerous, they treated it as harassment related to an ongoing legal case and forwarded everything to their legal department. The court case stretched on for months, but the outcome was never really in doubt. Between the recorded threats, witness testimony, police reports, and CPS findings, Britney had built an ironclad case against herself. Marcus pled out on his various charges and disappeared back to whatever state he'd been avoiding. The children remained in my temporary custody throughout the proceedings, and the transformation was remarkable. Ethan started excelling in school once he wasn't worried about taking care of his little brother and managing household chaos. Noah's anxiety decreased dramatically with consistent routines and reliable adults. During one particularly dramatic court session, Britney lost control and tried to physically attack me in front of the judge, bailiffs, and everyone else present. She had to be restrained and removed from the courtroom, which pretty much eliminated any remaining sympathy for her position. The judge's expression said everything about how seriously she damaged her own case. The final custody hearing was almost anticlimactic after everything that had happened. Britney's parental rights were terminated based on abandonment, neglect, and her demonstrated inability to provide safe, stable care. I was granted full legal custody of both boys, with the state providing support services to help with the transition. That evening, as we celebrated with pizza and ice cream in our quiet apartment, Ethan looked at me with tears in his eyes and said something I'll never forget. He told me he'd known from that first day that I wouldn't give up on them, that I was different from all the other adults who'd made promises and then disappeared when things got difficult. The scared little brother who'd spent years absorbing abuse and neglect had finally found his purpose, protecting two innocent kids from the same toxic family dynamics that had shaped my own childhood. The final court session was scheduled for a cold February morning, almost 2 years after this whole nightmare began. I sat in that courtroom with my lawyer, watching Britney make one last desperate attempt to reclaim her children through a combination of tears, accusations, and promises to change. Her performance was actually impressive in its shamelessness. She claimed to have found religion, completed parenting classes, and developed a stable relationship with a wonderful new man who was eager to be a father figure. According to her testimony, I'd poisoned her children against her and stolen the family life she deserved. But here's what Britney never understood about consequences. They accumulate over time, and eventually there's too much evidence to explain away. The judge had police reports documenting her violent home invasion, CPS records showing a pattern of neglect, recorded phone calls proving her threats and manipulation, and almost 2 years of evidence showing the boys thriving in my care. When it came time for Ethan and Noah to speak with the judge privately, I felt my heart racing despite knowing we'd prepared for this moment. These kids had been through so much trauma and manipulation that I worried about how they'd handle the pressure of essentially choosing between their biological mother and their uncle. The boys were in the judge's chambers for almost an hour. When they emerged, Ethan walked straight to me and hugged my arm, while Noah climbed into my lap like he'd done hundreds of times over the past months. Their body language said everything about where they felt safe and wanted to stay. Judge Martinez took another 30 minutes reviewing the case files before delivering her decision. Britney's parental rights were permanently terminated based on abandonment, neglect, demonstrated violence, and inability to provide stable care. I was granted full legal adoption rights for both children, with the state providing ongoing support services. The moment that decision was announced, Britney exploded in a rage that proved the judge had made exactly the right choice. She lunged across the courtroom trying to get to me, screaming that I'd stolen her babies and ruined her life. It took 3 bailiffs to restrain her while she continued threatening to destroy me and promising to find ways to take back what belonged to her. Even Mom, who'd managed to avoid jail time by testifying against her own daughter, looked shocked by this final display of violence and instability. The woman she'd spent decades protecting and enabling had just demonstrated in front of the judge exactly why she couldn't be trusted with children's safety. As we walked out of that courthouse, I felt like I was finally closing the book on a toxic family dynamic that had controlled my entire childhood. But more importantly, I was opening a new chapter focused on giving these 2 amazing kids the stable, loving home they deserved. The drive back to our apartment was quiet except for soft music on the radio. Ethan sat in the passenger seat, looking relieved but exhausted from the emotional weight of the proceedings. Noah fell asleep in his car seat, clutching the same toy truck he'd been carrying since that first day Britney abandoned them. That evening, we had what became our traditional celebration dinner: pizza, ice cream, and a movie of their choice. But this time felt different because we weren't celebrating surviving another court date or CPS visit. We were celebrating the fact that we were officially, legally, permanently a family. While we were eating, Ethan made one of those profound observations that kids sometimes surprise you with. He said he finally understood why his mom had always been so angry and mean. She spent so much energy trying to take things from other people that she never learned how to build anything good for herself. The transformation in both boys over those 2 years had been remarkable to witness. Ethan went from being a scared kid forced to act like an adult to actually being able to enjoy childhood while still maintaining his natural leadership qualities. He joined the robotics club at school and discovered he'd inherited some of my analytical thinking abilities. Noah evolved from an anxious, clingy child into this confident, chatty kid who made friends easily and approached new experiences with enthusiasm instead of fear. His teacher said he'd never seen such a dramatic positive change in a student's emotional development and academic performance. As for me, becoming an unexpected father at 32 taught me things about myself I never could have discovered otherwise. All those years of feeling like the family outsider had actually prepared me to create the kind of stable, supportive home environment I'd always wished I'd had growing up. My co-workers were amazed by how naturally I adapted to parenting responsibilities. Apparently, my methodical approach to problem solving and attention to detail translated perfectly into managing school schedules, doctor appointments, homework help, and all the other logistics of raising children. The boys also connected me to a community I'd never been part of before. Through school events, neighborhood activities, and youth sports, I found myself building friendships with other parents who appreciated my reliability and genuine care for the kids' well-being. Being responsible for someone else's happiness forced me out of my comfortable introvert shell in the best possible way. 6 months after the adoption was finalized, we moved into a larger house with a real yard where the boys could play and have friends over. Watching them run around our backyard with neighborhood kids, laughing and acting like normal children instead of walking on eggshells, reminded me daily why all the legal battles and family drama had been worth it. The last I heard about Britney, she'd moved to another state with yet another boyfriend and was telling people that her evil brother had stolen her children through lies and manipulation. Mom occasionally sent awkward text messages asking about the boys, but we kept those interactions brief and superficial. Some relationships are too toxic to repair, no matter how much time passes. But here's the thing about breaking free from toxic family patterns. Sometimes the best revenge is just building something better. Those 2 scared, neglected children who showed up on my doorstep that July afternoon taught me that family isn't about blood relations or childhood history. It's about showing up consistently, creating safety and stability, and choosing love over dysfunction every single day. Ethan just turned 11, and Noah is 8 now. They call me Dad instead of Uncle Jack. And when people ask about their family situation, they just say their father is a computer programmer who works from home a lot. It's simple, honest, and represents a life we've built together without needing to explain the complicated history that brought us here. Every night when I tuck them into bed and they tell me about their day, school projects, friend drama, video game achievements, or whatever else is important in their world, I'm reminded that sometimes the best thing you can do for a child is just be the stable, reliable adult they can count on. The scared little brother who spent 18 years feeling invisible and unwanted finally found his purpose. And it turned out that purpose was protecting two innocent kids from experiencing the same neglect and manipulation that had defined my own childhood. Thanks for sticking with me through this whole crazy story. I know it was a lot, but sometimes life throws you curveballs that change everything. What do you think about how this all played out? Was I right to get CPS involved, or should I have handled things differently? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you or you found it interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories. Your support really means a lot and helps me keep sharing these experiences. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.